Hello, and welcome to another episode of What I Know to Be True So Far. In today's episode, we have a guest session, and the person who is on this show means a great deal to me, and it feels so amazing to be able to create this space where she can share her journey of what she knows to be true so far. Nichola Hand is a mother, a creator, a business owner, a dreamer, a woman carrying her soulmate's love and light into every step forward in her life. She's been forever shaped by the grief with her passing of her soulmate, but still finds the beauty in the messy, raw, and preciousness of life. I just want to give a warning for anyone, a trigger warning, that we will be talking about grief and loss in this episode, and Nichola's experience of what she knows to be true so far with her relationship with grief, and also her spiritual journey of supporting her soulmate as he transitioned into his next soul's journey. I hope that you enjoy this episode. It's very raw, it's very vulnerable, and there's some very expansive ideas that Nichola shares in this episode, and I feel really grateful that there is this space where we can listen and learn and be vulnerable with our hearts and open with our minds when it comes to experiencing grief and loss in our lives. Hi, Nichola. Welcome to the show. A bit when we do the introduction. Hi, and welcome to the show. So nice to have you here, though.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell people who do not know that we have known each other for, I think, maybe 12 or 13 years? How did we originally meet? How do we know each other? Hair, that's right.
Hair. Magically came in to my life through your hair. We just hit it off straight away.
For anyone who does not know what Nichola does, she's an incredible hairdresser based in the Gold Coast, and she's not just that. She's one of the most intuitive, insightful, most incredible people that I've ever come across in my life, and was also the person that was the first point of contact into awakening, which took me down this wild path of discovering who I really was. I walked into your salon with a short blonde bob. Or bleach blonde hair.
And you were determined to just grow it out, baby.
And I had the most incredible experience because I sat down in your chair when I was just an accountant and I was pregnant with my son, and I needed to go to someone.
You were not just an accountant.
I was never just an accountant, but I was pregnant with my son. I needed an organic hairdresser. I Googled it and up you came, and I went in there and you literally began the transition and change in my life. And I'm just so grateful that I get to have you on the podcast episode so that I can share a little bit of your magic and wisdom with my audience, because you are such a special human being. So did you want to share with everyone what it is that you do? And
oh, so much. Yes, I'm a hairdresser. I have a salon on the Gold Coast. I am a mum, first and foremost, of 3 incredible kids. I have my salon. I'm the Australian distributor for the product that I use in the salon. I co-own a very conscious plant-based meal delivery service here on the Gold Coast. And what else? And I'm very passionate about sharing my journey, which has been a tough one.
You are one of the most multi-passionate, talented people that I know, and you are a force. That is one way to describe you. And I think that for anyone who is a mother of 3 children, let alone a mother of 3 children who navigates that as a solo parent, you're an absolute inspiration. Can you share with my audience, because I know your story, but I think it's amazing, what led you to becoming I'll call you a spiritual being? Would you consider yourself a spiritual being or a soulful?
Spiritual beings. Well, I feel like ever since I was a kid, I was just the different person in my family. And I don't look at that negatively. I was the question asker. I was the one that didn't take things as face value. I guess in the spiritual sense, I'm the black sheep of my family in some ways. And it definitely hasn't been an easy road. My father left my mum when she was 5 months pregnant with me. So he left her to raise two kids on her own. So I came from a broken home. And, we lived in council houses in the UK, and it was a very tough. My mum did the most amazing, incredible job that she could do with the little that she had. And she taught me to be a very independent person and, not needing to rely on other people. But equally, I always knew that there was more. There was more. I knew that I'd come from something more, and and I don't mean that in the physical human sense. I mean that in the before I came here sense. And yeah, I was maybe 11, and I suffered abuse by my step grandfather, which kind of led me on a path of it was quite an insular path. My mum did the best she could with the tools and the knowledge that she had at the time. And we moved country. We moved from Wales. I'm from Wales originally. We moved from Wales to England. And it was quite a solo journey for me as a teenager. And I quickly learned that you are either going to be a victim of your circumstances, or those circumstances that happen to you in life, you wouldn't be who you are without them. So that's the path that I took, which is not the path of least resistance. It's a tough road. And then when I was 20, I met John, my husband, and we had an incredible 25 years together. We came to Australia, to Sydney, and we came with hairdressing. That's how we landed here. And yeah, I guess for me, a spiritual journey has been pretty much my whole life. Like I don't ever remember there not being a time in my life where I wasn't daydreaming or, looking at the big wide world. I went to a Catholic school as a non-Catholic kid. That was eye-opening. It was a very strict Catholic school, and, not to offend anybody, but, my personal experience of that was, not great. We were treated very differently because we weren't Catholic. And I remember sitting in the cathedral attached to our school and reading the Bible. We weren't allowed to take part in the service because we weren't Catholic. And we had to read the Bible. And I just remember sitting there and, reading things like treat others as you would do yourself, and looking out at an entire school of people, and we were treated pretty differently. So I knew then that everything we needed was inside of us, and we didn't need to believe in a God that was outside of us. For me, from an early age, religion taught me that everything that I needed was outside of me, and I needed to go and look for it, and I needed to be a good person. Otherwise, bad things would happen. But then if I wasn't a good person, it was okay because I could just tell someone about it, and it would all be forgotten about. So it was a confusing time when I was little, and that was like little. I was little, a little person. So yeah, I really feel like spiritually, I've always been connected to that side of myself. Sometimes unconsciously, but most of the time very consciously.
I think it's amazing as well what you said about, everything that you experience, you kind of have this moment where you just get to decide. You get to decide what you're going to make of it, and also like the life that you're going to live from that. And I think one of the things that I resonated with you initially when I started coming to get my hair done was that you were so open to questioning everything. And you were like, yeah, but why? Why wouldn't you question? Like, why wouldn't you ask, like, why are we doing that? Why are we signing up to that? And I remember thinking, like, I had this past of like it was a horrific past that I had just put in a box, and I'd not like really dealt with it. And I just sugarcoated it with being the most perfect version of myself. And I never questioned like why all those things happened, and the fact that certain things made me an incredibly compassionate person. They made me, all of these values that I actually really loved about myself. And so I think when you say that we have an opportunity to like decide with that or get to make of it, the path of least resistance is not that. It's diving right into it and working out deeply who you are and connecting who you are, and always asking those questions like, why have I just decided to agree with this life path? Or why have I just decided that this is the only reality that I can live? Or why have I decided that for me to be a good human, I have to be an accountant, and I have to, and it has to be in this way for a company, and I must, tick all those success boxes. Do you think that, like, as someone who knows what it's like to be in your salon, do you think part of what you do in your work is the gift of helping people really understand that and giving people these like microbites of safe spaces to own the questionings and also own our journeys?
Yeah, definitely. I guess a lot of my clients would agree with that. And I'm a Libra. So for me, it's all about balance, but I'm the honest person, but is honest with a lot of vulnerability and compassion. And, I have always been a like question everything person. If someone tells me I can't do something, it makes me want to do it even more.
Yeah. And like, I wonder if even part of your soul journey was to come into this world with that deep sense of questioning everything, because you give so much permission for everyone who crosses your path, whether it's through your work or in your normal life, day-to-day life. You seem to activate that. And I've sat there waiting to get my
Yeah.
hair done and seen you do that with like everybody who comes into your vortex, and we can't help but love ourselves deeply around you or accept ourselves deeply around you. And I think it's such a gift that you have the capacity to do that.
Definitely.
Do you feel like there's an out of the box moment where you broke out of the box? Was that moving to Australia, or was there any other moments that felt really like,
I definitely remember when I said I was moving to Australia, my entire family just didn't believe that I was going to do it. They just didn't believe that that I would actually do it. Which I find baffling, because why wouldn't I? But yeah, I remember lots of my, cousins, and yeah, lots of people were like, yeah, she's not going to do that. And then it got closer and closer and closer. And then it got to, drive into the airport, and my mum was in bits, because I mean, obviously I was leaving the country, but I genuinely think she thought that I wasn't going to go. So yeah, I think if there was an out of the box moment, that was definitely a catalyst when I came here. As soon as my feet landed at Brisbane Airport, we had to come. It wasn't a sky ramp thing. We had to walk down the stairs onto the tarmac, and I knew I was home when I came here.
do you think there was always an ambition that you had inside of you to pull that forward and to create a very abundant life? I would call you an incredibly abundant person, not just through finances and your business, but also in all aspects of your life. You have a lot of love and all the wonderful things in your life. Do you feel like you consciously attracted all of that and manifested that into your life? And what are your thoughts on manifestation?
100%. I think if you'd have asked me when we very first met, then yes, that would have been a very normal conversation around, manifested it.
Yeah.
I pulled it in. I had vision boards and did all the things.
Yeah.
But you put the last 15 years of experience in, and just, I don't think we've touched on it yet, but my husband passed away from brain cancer 2 years ago. So certainly in the last 2.5 years, it's been a lot. And I even look at that completely different now to what I did 15 years ago. I firmly believe, after the experience that I've been on, especially in the last 2.5 years with my husband, that we live in a multi-dimensional universe. And if you look at time as linear, we are in this lifetime here. but there are multiple versions of ourselves, slithers of time all the way along that linear timeline where we are living multiple realities all at the same time.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've experienced it. And yeah, when you look back at, 20 years ago when they wrote The Secret, they only really gave this much.
Yes, 100%.
Of the reality.
Like, I feel like you step into this like spirituality and consciousness, and you start with this manifestation section, like this egoic structure of like, I want to have things, I want to create things. And then you go on a fucking ride, and that ride is wild, and it takes you to the depths of so much awakening, depending on how much you open yourself up to it as well.
But also depending on what you're leading with as well. If you're leading with this, you're going to hit lots of doors. But if you're leading with this, then it's going to be a bit more effortless.
Yes.
But equally, are we living that version of ourselves already in a different time?
Yeah.
And we just need to match
that
version of ourselves. That to me is the law of attraction.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And I think that the availability, or even just the thought process of like it's all happening at the same time, it actually it helps you not stress out about stuff so much. And you're not like trying to like pull yourself into the other version of yourself because you think that's better. You're just fully aware that that's where it's going. And you're kind of like, what is the expansion that I'm having right now that helps me to match into that frequency of whatever's happening in that alternative space? I know when I do visualization work, I am so innately aware of the feelings that I have when I'm there and what I'm doing, and I have conversations, and it's not from imagination. It's from I'm already experiencing that, but just for a microsecond while I'm meditating, I've experienced it and the reality of it in that meditative state. Do you think that when we're looking at it from the mind space, so you mentioned before, when we come from our mind, we have a lot of doors, and we come from our heart, it's a lot easier path. For anyone who's listening, who struggles with that, who's kind of like in that clinging phase to trying to like, quote unquote, manifest things, what do you think is the one piece of advice you would give people to soften into the heart space, or to live more from your heart, so that you can have more of an easier journey, or at least a more accepting journey of whatever reality you experience?
Yeah, based off my family's experiences, when you have unresolved emotion and trauma and things that we store on the inside, and that is stored just right below our heart. And I try to explain this to my little boy. He's 11, and he has really struggled with losing his dad. And we talk to him all the time about fight or flight. And he's 11, but really is emotionally frozen at 9. That's his reality right now. And I try and explain this to him in a practical way, which is, we have a tree that's inside us. And when we think of a tree in the forest, trees draw their nutrients from the earth. So it pulls it up through the roots. So if your roots are down in your tummy, that's where your emotions sit. And your tree trunk runs up your spine, and then the branches hold your brain. And that is your central nervous system. So when we have stuck emotion or stored emotion, and we're not looking at that side of ourselves, then that's what's feeding our brain, which then in turn is anxiety, and it's feeding our ego. And when we don't deal with our trauma and things that go wrong in our lives, and we ignore it, that's what feeds our ego. And so then when we're trying to manifest, back to your original question, when we're trying to manifest, or we're, stepping into the world of the law of attraction, that stored emotion is what's feeding into our brain. So we can't fully open our heart space and lead from that place. So we end up leading from here. And 9 times out of 10, people that are stepping into that space, especially for the first time, you're stepping into it from a need and a want. So sometimes the terminology around what you're using to bring things in and, you know, to match the vibe, you've got to match the vibration of the life that you're already living somewhere else in the multiverse.
Yeah.
So in order to bring yourself up to that frequency, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And we are here to learn. We are here to go through all of our senses, and we are here to feel everything. That's why they're called feelings. We've got to feel them. And if we don't allow ourselves to feel the good, the bad, and the ugly, then we're leading in here.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. I resonate with this so much, especially around the anxiety piece, because it's something that as I work through deeper levels of trauma, PTSD, I'm not fully resolved in my anxiety. And I can randomly, I can go 6 months without anything, and then just randomly something gets activated and I'll have anxiety and a panic attack from out of nowhere. And the more I look into that, the more that resonates with me, that there is different layers to that stored feelings or stored trauma in my body. And I've started looking at these moments of anxiety and my panic attacks is like, this is a really great portal for information for something that's not quite being worked on or not quite being healed or not quite being accepted about myself. And I think acceptance is like, there's the denial of the emotion, which then just compounds it and makes it so much, bigger so that it has to come out kind of thing. And so I think that with anxiety and trauma, the more we can accept it for what it is and love it and show ourselves compassion in that space, not love the experience of it, but give deep love for being a human.
Remember that we are having a human experience, and some of that is really shit
and heartbreak.
Right.
Yep.
Shit, right?
Yep.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yep.
It isn't. And I think in this space of healers and law of attraction, and there's so much fluffy, the fluffy shit sells, but the reality is
the fluffy shit does sell.
It's hard. Life is hard. Like, it's really hard.
Yeah.
But even in the hardest moments, you have to be able to sit with yourself and say, I'm learning from this. What am I learning from this? What is this teaching me? And how can I help others who are also experiencing this? Because we're all on a crazy journey called life. And we were all born, and we're all walking to the same place.
Yeah.
We're all slowly dying.
Yeah.
Like, that is reality. We are all walking home at some point. So the journey is, helping others as much as you possibly can through shared experiences.
I agree with that 100%. And I think that being of service and the act of service is so different from doing things to just get what you want or make money or whatever. Like, when you realize contribution is the thing that gives you so much purpose, your life shifts in a new way and everything starts to feel a little bit more yummy, and I spent so long, oh my gosh, just so long not getting that piece, that the reason we all crave purpose is because we're designed for it. We're designed to contribute to each other as a community, as a whole, as one. And so we have to be able to do that through our learnings and through teaching other people by sharing stories and our experiences.
But I also think as well, with what you've just said about purpose, I think it's really easy for people to get so caught up with, what is my purpose?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe your purpose is just being a great mum.
Yes.
Maybe your purpose is just being a great hairdresser. Maybe your purpose is, like, I think, and when people get caught up with what is my purpose, it's your thinking brain.
Yep.
Again, this emotion that's stuck down here that's feeding the brain
Yes.
that you're not then able to get out of the brain.
Mm,
Anything that runs on an auto loop like that,
yes.
it's you've got to come back down here
Mm,
and work there, because this will drive you crazy if
yes.
you.
I recently spoke to Tim about, what can we do if I have a panic attack or I'm experiencing anxiety? What can we do together? And we were talking about how just the simple act of holding hands and redirecting our breath to our heart spaces collectively together changes and shifts the energy of the experience for me.
Definitely,
Mm,
definitely. And even going outside, like science has proven
mm,
that trees and plants and flowers and grass and everything in nature is interconnected.
yeah.
So one plant in the forest or in the garden isn't doing well, the other plants in the garden or the forest will send
Yeah.
nutrients and healing to the plant.
Mm,
They've now proven that it does the same for humans. We are made up of the same
mm,
as what the plants, the animals,
mm,
the trees, we all come from the same consciousness.
mm.
So even if you don't have a beautiful, loving partner like you do that is able to hold your hand and bring you back down into your heart, just even stepping outside and putting your bare feet on the grass and just breathing
Yeah.
is lay on it, hug a
Rub the
tree,
grass. Just
hug the
enjoy all the
trees.
flowers. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a huge nature connection advocate. I think I always will be, for the simple fact of I want to protect the earth, but really also because I truly believe we just accept that that's our home space and we can go back there anytime. We're going to be able to live in that harmony way more often, which does make such a huge difference. And what it does for our cognitive function, our creativity, our intuition, like it's just mind blowing. So I do want to I want to segue into something because you did mention what you've been through, what your children are going through. And I want to honor John and have a conversation about your beautiful husband.
Yeah.
If you could share with my audience, and I'll just let my audience know in advance that there are some trigger warnings with this conversation that we may be having right now with grief and around grief. So I'll let you share your story and John's story with us.
Oh, John, he was an incredible man, the best dad, the best husband. He taught me a lot about anxiety because he was a chronic anxiety.
Mm,
Um, Pretty much most of his life, he never really sought help, outside help for it. And when I first met him when we were 20, he was in a very depressed state. He's always had a vice. He's always had something to numb the feelings that he had inside. And his anxiety was, he had the very strong loop,
yeah.
the thoughts, the loop thoughts in the brain, very OCD, but a beautiful, like he was so emotionally available because he wasn't ever really in his body. I
Mm,
feel like he had a foot in there
mm,
and the rest of him was out here. He really began to sort of change. We went on sort of two separate paths almost. We
mm,
didn't get separated or anything like that, but we did kind of like sideways off for a moment, just where he would do his thing and I would do mine. And I just lived in hope that at some point he would come to meet me
mm,
on that path. And he did, probably about 6 years before he passed away. So I have that very peaceful, I'm at peace because he did. And he did a lot of work on himself, like so much work on himself. And yeah, he was going amazingly well. And then May 2022, he was a music producer in his spare time and he got a day off. So he leaned underneath his computer desk to turn on the power so he could do some music, and he had a seizure. And that's the day that completely turned our lives upside down. Like, honestly, it was ruthless. It was COVID. It was a fucked up time.
Mm.
We weren't vaccinated, so we had all of the issues. You know, the ambulance came. They took John in the ambulance, but I wasn't allowed to go in the ambulance because I wasn't vaccinated. But they took John in the ambulance and he wasn't vaccinated. They kept me from being in the hospital. I was not allowed. He had to advocate for himself for about 40 hours after having a multi-level seizure. I had to communicate with doctors over the phone because they wouldn't let me into ED because I wasn't vaccinated. Had to have written permission from the Queensland government to enter the hospital. So did my kids. We were allowed to go into ICU after he'd had brain surgery, but we weren't allowed to eat in the food court because we weren't vaccinated. Like, it was a mental time, and we went on a very big journey. He was given it was a 1% cancer, and it was very difficult for him not to buy into what they were telling him. They gave him 5 months, and we had to work very hard with his anxiety to keep him from attaching onto what he was told. He was very adamant that he didn't want radiation and chemotherapy. We were also stuck in a time where we couldn't leave the state, let alone the country. We were locked into our state. So we didn't have the opportunity to go to Mexico. That's where we would have gone without a shadow of a doubt. And we had a consultation with Hope for Cancer in Mexico, and we went on our own little healing journey here, and he was doing really well. So when they found the brain cancer, he had 3 small tumors in the back of his brain. The biggest one was 1.5 centimeters. Like, they were all relatively small, but because he'd got 3, they had basically written him off. They weren't, that chemo was a no-go, and they recommended radiation, but it was basically just to extend life, basically. And long and short of it, we got onto a protocol. We kept adding to it all the time. They told us that his tumors would grow back in the location that they'd cut them out, and they didn't. But 2 new ones, they were basically growing across his liver meridian. So in between the occipital and the parietal lobe, which is interesting because John's liver function tests were never normal whole life. But they were tiny. And he'd got an infection in his body, and they put him on, this was in September 2022. We'd gotten rid of a tumor. So there were 2 that grew back. 2 new ones that grew. With our protocol, we'd successfully managed to eliminate 1. The second one hadn't grown any. And they put him on steroids that crossed the blood-brain barrier, and he was a mess, like a mess. And we were trying to get him off his steroids, and basically, very long story, the shortened version, we went into hospital in October 2022 to get him off the last 2 milligrams of dexamethasone that they'd put him on. He was having crazy symptoms. It's quite a strong steroid because it crosses the blood-brain barrier. And they admitted him in to get him off that drug, and they could give him, different meds to compensate the side effects. And it was a Friday afternoon, and the admitting doctor didn't communicate with the staff. They put him on the palliative care ward because, in their words, they had more drugs available to them in that ward. And I left him there at 10 o'clock that night and went there at 5:30 the next morning, and he was not able to walk. And they had quadrupled his dose of dexamethasone, and they'd given him 5 times more anti-seizure medication than what he was on. So It took me a little bit to kind of figure it out on the Saturday that actually there'd been a miscommunication between the admitting doctor and the on-call doctor, with it being a Friday night. And because he was put on the palliative care ward and he got glioblastoma, they just thought he was at end of life care and treated him as such. And then because he'd been given that level of medication, we couldn't just not give him that level of medication. And he just went downhill. It meant mental health went massively downhill. And Monday morning he made a decision, and that was that. They sedated him an hour later, and his beautiful, healthy body took 4 days to pass away because wasn't ready to go. And yeah, we've been on a whirlwind ever since. So it's been a big journey. It's been a big journey.
That is such a heartbreaking story to I can't speak. And I knew this would happen. I was like, I'm gonna keep it together, but I can't. It's uncomfortable to hear that story.
Oh, it's uncomfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
It's not uncomfortable talking about it, but reflecting back at the time that we were in, number one, that compounded everything. It compounded. Nothing made sense as it was with what was happening. You know, we are healthy people.
Yeah.
For that to happen to our family, you speak to anybody that knows us, and there is no way that you would think that that would happen to us.
Yeah.
I think it was so shocking, or to him, sorry. And then, you know, for it to happen at the time that it happened, there's been so many times of, you know, why, you know, the questions of the why has this happened? And, you know, there's no, we will not know the answer to those questions until it's our turn. That's reality. And the human living the experience, we're not meant to know.
Not. Otherwise we would, right?
Otherwise we would. The one thing that I can share is I had a healing for about 2 months after he passed. Like we were sensing him in the house all the time. You know, we'd be sitting having dinner and there'd be walking upstairs and just crazy, crazy shit, you know, shadows at the end of the bed. And I just had a knowing that he was gone, but he wasn't gone, you know, and he was hanging on. You know, from my learnings of what I've learned through my life so far, when people do that, they're not growing. They can't remember that when they step over, they can't remember what it's like to step over. So they cling to the life that's here.
Yeah.
But they know that they've passed, but they can't remember what's next, what's coming next. So they still have that humanness to them that prevents them from going. And I went and there's an amazing healer here on the Gold Coast that very much puts you into the quantum field when you're in his healing sessions. And we had a conversation about, you know, that I felt like he was very much hanging on, and he, you know, because without them completely passing over, their soul isn't healing from the human experience. So I had the most incredible session where I was able to meet him where he was, which was exactly, people who have near-death experiences, they say the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
There's a vastness and a blackness, and there's a light. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and John was in the tunnel. And we got to have a conversation, and, you know, he didn't want, he was very much expressing that he didn't want to go, and I didn't want him to go. But he had to, for himself. And And yeah, he wouldn't go. So I had the absolute amazing experience where I got to walk through the light with him.
Mm.
And I did get to see what was on the other side.
Mm.
And I got to sit there for a bit with him, and it was incredible.
Mm.
And it's not a pie in the sky heaven.
Can you tell us more about what it is and what you
Yes.
experienced, please?
We come back to the linear timeline.
Yeah.
It's just another slither in the timeline. Where he went for his soul to heal was just like here. There's trees and there's water and there's things, but there's no one. There's no one, and there's no, well, certainly in our experience. And there was a bench for him to sit next to a lake, and the sun was shining, and it was just like we were somewhere else on the planet, honestly. And but the sun felt different. Really felt the healing from the sun. And there was just a knowing that this is where your soul goes to heal from your human experience. And
Wow.
then you're choosing whether you want to, evolve or reincarnate.
Go back, like, as in, like, move on to your next journey as a soul, or go back to Earth to continue to grow as a soul, as a human in the human experience. Wow.
Absolutely. It was the most incredible experience I think I've ever. I don't think anything will to be able to have had the experience to go and then come back consciously.
Yeah. And did you choose to come back? Like, was there a moment in that space there and you're like,
No.
I have to go
There
back?
was always that I had a knowing that had to happen for him. He was never going to go. But as soon as we went through, it was just like a slither. It was like big doors that you couldn't see because it was black, with a sliver of light, and you just had to walk through it.
Wow.
But because he was so attached here and connect family-wise, we're very connected family. Like, numerologically, we're very connected. We all have the exact same numerological numbers. We're a very connected family. So his anchor here is definitely his family. And so for him, but as his soul couldn't remember because he was still so encompassed in his human, what he'd left so early. He was 42. His soul couldn't remember that if you just go through that door, there is no lesser connection with the people that are here. Still have your connection with the people that are here. It's just your soul has to heal from your human experience.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, like, that's wild, really, when you really think about healing from your human experience. I think we're always thinking about how that we're humans to help heal our soul. And it sounds, when you're talking about it that way, it's almost like it's kind of the other way around. Like, your soul is here growing and having the human experience, but then when you go, you have to heal from that human experience that you had as well, so that you have the opportunity.
Fucking hard.
Yes. And that's like pulling us forward into so many new levels of growth and expansion and whatnot when you're in that space. And what for anyone who may have a loved one who hasn't transitioned and they do feel the presence of the energy around, because I know that, with witchcraft and with practical magic and things like that, we can do these energy clearings, right? And we can talk with the souls and give them the tools to help them journey on. But for anyone who's not like magically inclined or doesn't really know, or like in your case, has the gift of a healing experience that leads to this opportunity to help your loved one pass over, what do you think people can do if they're sensing their loved ones there and they don't really know how to help them transition? Do you have any advice for people in that space?
I think the very first bit of advice is not to be fearful of letting them go, because
Mm,
letting them go is not them going. That's
mm,
first and foremost, because a little bit of them stays with us until the way that I did a post about this the other day, that when they leave us,
yeah.
they we get to keep a little bit of their soul, and
Yes.
we carry that with us
Mm,
until it's like a keepsake that we
mm,
get to give back when we transition over.
I love
And so they're never not a part of us, and
it.
they're never not apart from us.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's first and foremost, because I do think when when you walk in that path of grief,
Yeah.
it's such a, grief is every emotion that your body could feel all at once, anger, sadness, happiness, joy, and it comes from love. Grief is born from love. If you didn't have the love for the person in the first place, you wouldn't be so bloody devastated. So first and foremost, it's not to buy into letting them go is letting them go, and you're not going to feel them, because you still will.
Mm,
It's about them. It's about the soul that's left. That's It's about them moving into that different consciousness
mm,
to be able to heal from this experience.
yes.
Um, and I feel like, or do I know it to be true,
Yeah.
that the longer a soul stays stuck
Yeah.
in between, the harder it is for them to cross over, you know?
And so when you're not letting them go, you're also keeping their soul from doing what needs to happen next.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%. And then it's if you're not comfortable, like I made a conscious decision that I was going to help him move.
Mm,
That I was When I went to that healing, Troy and I talked about the fact that that's what I was there for. I wasn't there for me, I was there for John. But
yeah.
I needed someone to help facilitate that.
Mm,
So for him to put me into that state, that I would be able
mm,
to do that, because I
mm,
didn't feel like I was strong enough in myself
yeah.
at that time, 2 months after he passed away, that I would be able to do that myself. So to be able to have someone else help me with that was amazing, and
Phenomenal.
hold space.
And do you think, like, is there an easy way to, I know that you would know a million of wonderful, amazing people that have connected you to this particular person that could help you on your journey, but is there, when someone's looking for someone like that to help them
Yeah.
support someone, what should they be looking out for in a healer? Or because I know that there's a lot of not healthy or not integrity based spiritual, or it's not always integrity based, and it isn't
Yeah.
always from a good
More
source.
like the
What
people,
can you look out for when you're finding someone like that?
not the people that shout the loudest.
Yeah.
I find the people that shout the loudest about themselves are not the people that you wanna be going. There's nothing wrong with shouting the loudest, but I feel like with such a sensitive
Mm,
topic and the nature of it,
yeah.
you really need someone that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's great to kind of talk with other people that have had healings or experiences with that.
Yeah,
'Cause otherwise, it
yeah,
can open up more complexities. Like it can open up more doors of like things not quite going the way you were hoping them to go. And when you're going through grief and you're processing trauma, to be in that state of vulnerability and to not have someone who knows what they're doing and holding space in the right way, not only for yourself, but also for the soul that's trying to transition. And do you have advice for, because I feel like from the outside, I watch you processing grief and I'm like, this woman is fucking amazing. And I'm always marveling in what you write and how you're going about it, being such an incredible mother that I know you are for your 3 children as well. What advice or what do you know to be true so far about processing grief and what advice can you give to anyone who's going through grief?
Well, I think when you're a mum, I've lost my soulmate, number one, but
Mm,
my kids lost their dad, man.
mm,
And I don't know what that feels like because my connection to their dad was different to their connection with their dad.
yeah.
So everybody's personal experience with grief is always going to be different
Mm,
because A, it's how you view it, B, it's what your belief systems are, and
yeah.
it very much comes down to the connection that you had with the person to
Mm,
begin with. Whether and I mean that from is it your partner, is it your dad, is it your mom, is it your
yeah.
grandma? It's different. Like we've lost John's nan in the last 12 months as well. But she was 84.
Yeah.
You're not expecting it, but there's a level of comfortableness that you
Yes.
have when someone's a lot older
Mm,
because they lived and she lived amazingly to accept it.
yeah.
Whereas when someone's young, it's so shocking, and it's not any more shocking. And I don't want that to come across that way. It's not better and it's no worse, but it is different.
Mm,
But my personal journey with my grief is different to my kids, and it always will be.
mm,
Because even though we lost the same person, I'm very conscious of the fact that they lost their dad and
yeah.
I lost my soulmate.
Yeah.
One does not outrank the other, but it does sit differently in the body. It
Yes.
just does. So I'm very conscious that not only am I navigating me, but I'm trying to navigate three little people,
Mm,
even around his death, it's that they were 9, 16, and 14.
mm,
And, how do you and especially around the circumstances because he went in for a change of medication and
yeah.
he never came out. So it was so shocking at the same time. So it's you just have to be present.
Yeah.
You just have to. I remember my girls were there when he passed. My little boy was very fearful of everything that was happening. So I didn't want to push him into anything. And I remember when the minute he passed away, I looked at my girls and I remember saying to them, there is nothing in your life that is going to be harder than this moment. Even when I pass away, whenever that is, it's never going to be as hard as this moment because you will never be this age again
Mm,
in this life.
mm,
And for any child, little person, to have to lose a significant person, being a parent or a sibling, like that's a significant loss for a child. So I'm super conscious of, being an observer and trying not to be in it. And we've had lots of conversations around the big
yeah.
hole that's in here that's
Mhm.
vast, but trying to sit on the outside, sit on the edge and
Mm,
dangle your legs in, but
mm,
fill it with your memories and not fall into it is like the biggest the biggest piece of advice you can give any child. And trying to give them scenarios. Kids are big visualizers. They've got very big visualizing brains. So to be able to give them tools that they can use their creative brain
mm,
to see it
yeah.
makes it more tangible. Because
Mm,
feelings are hard. They're big, they're wide, they're heavy,
yeah.
they're they're everything. It's like a big bag that we carry around on our back all the time.
Mm. I love the visualization too of like dangling your feet and filling it with memories. Like even for
Feel
me,
it.
yes. And
Doesn't
for
mean
me
you've got
as
to
an
jump in
adult,
there.
like that's helpful for me even to think about my grief and I've lost somebody I truly loved to my core. and he was so young, and it still has its edge to it, but at the time it felt so fucking unfair. And the hole was so big, and I would get
Yeah.
lost in it daily, and I just couldn't function as a human being. And I think even if I had had someone say to me, you can sit on the edge and dangle your legs in there and fill it with memories.
Want to be able to feel it.
Yeah.
That's the it's and that's what I try and say to these guys all the time. Like,
Yeah.
have to allow yourself to feel your feelings, because that's why they're called feelings. We've got to feel them. That's the experience, the human experience that the soul is having. But it's a pit on the inside when someone that we love leaves us. And it is like a big hole. But we have a choice whether we're going to sit in it and we're going to get lost in the darkness of it, or we can see that it's there and know that it's there and feel it just by putting toes in. We don't need to be all the way in that hole. It's very hard to get out of it once you climb in there.
Yes.
So
and grief is challenging, because actually there are so many times where you slip and you fall in the hole, and then you have to work your way out of that. And that whole analogy is I wish I had the words the way that you're saying them now, because it really does help you really understand what that process feels like. So thank you so much for saying that. I know that you say that for your kids, but I think that there's so many listeners who, if
100%.
resonate with that. Is there something that you know now that you would like to have given yourself? I know before we press record, we were talking about you have this incredible way with words and so much wisdom of what you channeled and what you wrote down through your process of going through what you went through after John passed away. And you documented that and you share some of that on Instagram to help people. And when we were talking about that, you said there's, so much now when I look back on it, and have deeper understanding. If someone's at their starting process of going through grief and loss, what advice would you have given to yourself at the beginning of the journey, or what advice would you give to someone at the beginning of theirs?
Journal it.
Yeah.
For sure. Because I think when you're in the early stages, and I journaled it from the day he had his seizure. And because for us as a family, the day we started grieving was not the day that he died. The day we started grieving was the day he had his seizure. Yeah. Because life changed in an absolute moment. And so for us, it was important to, I was holding everything for everyone at that time, and I needed an outlet to get my personal feelings out, and that's what I did. And that helped me through the cancer journey. And because you don't want to feel like you're feeling selfish for feeling the way that you're feeling about something that is affected. It wasn't happening to me. Like I had to keep this separation of, I kept looking at him and thinking, what the fuck must be going through your head? Because I know what's going through mine, and it's not even happening to me, but it's not happening to me.
Yes.
And so journaling my way through that process really helped when he did pass away, because I was able to look back and realize that was my realization that we were already in grief. Grief didn't start the day he died. It started way before that. and yeah, so it was exceptionally helpful. And I mean, obviously not everybody has the luxury of that. If it's, something that's sudden, obviously then you've got the shock of, where you haven't had a lead up to something. If someone passes away very, very suddenly, yeah, I don't feel like I'm qualified to to talk on that, because I haven't experienced that. I just know what's to be true from my own personal experience, but I certainly have clients that it has happened to, and it's been an exceptionally hard road because there is no sort of like there's no lead up to, it's just a bang and it's that person's just gone just like that. So it's yeah, it's difficult to put into words for that. You know, everybody's experience is different, but the more you can channel your feelings out, the better. The more you keep it bottled up on the inside, the
Yes.
worse it's going to be later.
Mm,
Um, you know, it creeps up. There's only so much that these little tummies
yeah.
can hold when it comes to a bag of emotions. And if you don't deal with how you're feeling, and even if that's just a little bit at a time, so you don't get overwhelmed. And that's where journaling really helped me, because you just, you know, you can scream and shout through your pen. You
Mm,
can love and accept through your pen. You can do all the feelings through your fingers, through the pen, and you do feel better. It does help. It doesn't at first, but it does. And then to be able to look back at it and reflect on it and see how doing that has shaped the journey actually is important.
yeah. And even that in itself is a really great tool to process even deeper some of the emotions that are left, behind, or not fully felt, or something that, I think that if you have that opportunity to reflect in that way, it gives you more of a door to go, okay, I'm maybe more ready now to feel the kinds of feelings I wasn't quite ready to feel right then in that moment.
And that's the thing. I don't, when you lose anyone, you're you're never ever not going to miss them.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I think the one thing that I got sick of hearing was time is a healer and time is a, and in reality, time doesn't exist. Humans created it.
Yeah.
Not real. We're all bound by time, but it doesn't exist at all. In the real world, it doesn't
Yeah.
exist. So, you know, when people constantly, it's the things that people, but then it's knowing that they're only saying that because they don't know what else to say,
Right.
or that's just what they know to be true on their
Yes.
pathway that they are on. So it's, you know, as much as I got sick of hearing it, I also had a deep respect and appreciation for the fact that that's what they know to be true.
And no
Um,
one knows, right? No one knows what to say and what to do, and it feels so hard because you want to know what to say, but nothing you can say is really going to.
other than bringing the person back, nothing makes it
Yeah.
better. It
Yeah.
doesn't. And, you know, I think John's death was the 27th of October, 2022. So we're coming up to the anniversary now. And I can honestly say I don't feel any different to what I did 2 years ago. I
Mm,
still feel, the feelings
yeah.
of like the magnitude of love is still the same.
Yeah.
That doesn't change.
Mm,
So how does time make it better?
yeah.
Because grief, it comes from love, and the vastness of the love that I have for him
Mm,
will never change.
mm,
So the grief for me personally will never change. So
mm.
I have to become comfortable with it.
Yeah.
That's my reality.
Being uncomfortable with grief and having a partnership with it, as opposed to thinking it's something that will go away over time. And that in itself is freeing, just that thought alone, really.
Well, you know, I've read a lot. I've received a lot of books about grief after he passed away, and I've maybe picked up one of them, and just the words, you know, it's yes, it's comforting, and yes, it's needed, and but equally this whole thing, this whole narrative of it gets better with time, and you will feel better and you will move on. And it's like, well, I don't want to move on
Mm.
from him. I
Mm.
want to move on with him, but
Yeah.
just because he's not here doesn't mean I'm not moving on with him. Like the
It's
whole
very-
narrative, it's heartbreaking
yeah.
because it's not true. Like you don't have to move on without someone.
Mm.
Yes, he's physically not here, but he's still here. And
Mm.
I have part of him in here as much as my kids do and everybody else that knew him. So how are we moving on
And is
when
moving on even the right words? Like what words do you use instead of moving on? You move through life with them? Is it
yes,
what would you
yes,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And
Mm.
you just it's a day at a time. Like,
Mm.
and right at the beginning, it was honestly, it was a minute at a time. Like it
Yeah.
was, you could like when that process was happening, time there was no time. Time
Mm.
stood still. I didn't know what day of the week it was, and that was very freeing as
Mm.
well. You know, not being bound by time
Mm.
was, yeah, not knowing the day of the week, not knowing anything was free. Yeah.
That's fascinating that you say that about time. I just had an experience of 4 days in nature, right? Where it was no fucking phones, no decision making, no nothing. I was just floating in crystal clear, icy water with trees and birds. And I was just like, this is what I came here to do. Like, I know I came here to be part of the 3D. I know I came here in this, era to have phones and all this stuff. But like when I'm there and I don't even like the only decision I'm making in the day is when shall I eat? When shall I sleep? What book shall I get lost in? It's so different because time doesn't really exist in that. And
Amazing
like,
how long the days are when you're in that space.
right. But also like you don't keep track of the time. You're just kind of going with when your tummy feels hungry. Shall we make a cook up? Shall we, and it's like this totally different way of being. And my phone, I didn't have my phone. It ran out of batteries by day 2 and my watch ran out of batteries. So I had no concept of time. And I was thinking exactly what you just said. It is freeing to not have to be bound by time. So that's fascinating. And I'm so glad that you said that. I need to have you on the show again so we can dive into all of the philosophical millions of things that you have. I wanted to just take a moment though, because it's close to home what happened with you and with John and your family, because I knew you all not on a really like intertwined level of life, but I did spend time with your family and have a barbecue, and I did visit you often and get my hair done, and I felt very much connected to you because you were such a huge influence in my life, and we've stayed connected through social media over the years. And it was heartbreaking to watch you go through that, and to hear your story of it was equally heartbreaking on the show. But I'm so glad that you can share this perspective on grief, because I think there's so much value in it. And I just want to honor you and honor John and everything that you do in this space with grief. For anyone who wants to follow your journey and your words of wisdom that you have, can you let my listeners know where they can go and find you?
Yeah, the Instagram page is grief_life after loss.
Beautiful. And you don't do grief work, you don't do grief counseling or anything like that, do you?
You should say that
Yeah.
because I just enrolled myself in a course because I
Yes.
definitely feel like for me personally, everything that I feel like we're taught and told it's not wrong and it helps some people,
Yeah.
but it didn't help me. I had to help myself.
Yeah.
So, and
And
I had
my hunch is that it's different for really conscious people. It's different for very spiritual people than, your average kind of person who hasn't delved into spirituality, self-awareness at the great lengths that spiritually curious people do. I think it's a different journey. And I don't
Or
think,
when you've got buckets of self-awareness,
yes,
it's difficult to read that stuff
yeah,
and not feel restricted
yes.
in your grief.
Yes. And even when you said, it's funny you should mention that, I'm like, oh, please tell me that you're going to go down this path. I've always been like, you're an exceptionally phenomenal hairdresser, but I'm like, this woman's talent of human to human connection is so beyond what I've seen, even in my many years of dealing with spiritual people, healers, coaches, all of these things. I know that there's a part of what it is that you brought here on this planet to do is exactly that kind of work. And so that makes my heart sing so much to even contemplate that you might, be a hand in the guiding pathway of people going through those experiences. So I'm going to follow your journey really closely, and whenever you're ready to share the offerings that I know you'll bring to this world, I'll always be shouting from the rooftops what an incredible human being you are.
Thank you, Carrie. Aw,
Mm.
I loves you
Yeah, I love you
very
too.
much.
And before I go, I do ask this quick question for anyone who is listening, because it's a super interesting question that stumps so many people, but I feel like for you, it may not stump you so much. Of all the experiences you've had in life up until this point, what is the one thing that you know to be true so far?
Oh, there's so many. That the minute we are born, we are all dying.
Mm,
And what you do between when you're born and when you die is very important.
mm,
And we need to consciously choose those things
mm,
very consciously, because we are not here to just get up and work a 9 to 5 and
mm,
exist. We're not human doings, we're human beings.
mm,
And to be a human being, we have to be okay with working on our inner selves and being able to share those experiences with
mm,
that's what you're doing here. A human being is here to learn and also share those lessons of learning. So, what do I know to be true is that more people need to share more of themselves to help.
mm,
We live in a pretty dark place sometimes, and to be to shine your light out into the world, even if it only touches one person, you've fulfilled your purpose as a human being.
I love that so very much. And I know we spoke about it before, to be of service just by being a human who's connecting to other humans is such a beautiful
Yeah.
gift. Yeah. And I hope that more people do take those words as a form of wisdom in a way, to really embody that and learn that we did come here to have these wild human experiences, but also to have connectivity, to support each other, to love each other,
And
to,
everything that we need is already inside. It's
yes,
not out there somewhere. It's
yes,
not out. If you keep searching for something that's out there, you're forever going to be searching, because you need to turn inward. It's
yeah,
inside. Okay.
absolutely. And even the pathway to purpose, you're already living your purpose if you can help one other human being in your
That's
journey of a
exactly
human.
right. That's
Mm.
it.
Mm. Thank you so much for coming on today, and thank you for sharing so vulnerably with me and my audience. I will have you back on the show if you would like to come back on in the future, and we can talk about some really warpy, magical stuff that I know that you and I love to nerd out on sometimes and have done many a time in your salon. So yeah, I look forward to having you back on the show again sometime.
Thanks, Kerry.